What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Hey guys, what's going on? It is Fantasy Points' newest show, the Underdog Drafter Party. I'm Jake, here with my co-host, one of the best football writers around, Ryan Heath. Me and Ryan, we're going to be drafting some Battle Royale teams, talking about our favorite scroll down options, discussing contest-specific strategy. We can also answer some questions that you guys may have about the slate, whether it's Battle Royale related, season-long, whatever. With that intro out of the way, Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Excited to dig into this slate. I feel like I have really strong, really sharp player takes this week, but then I look at the ADP and it looks like the rest of the field does too, because I'm having trouble finding ways to get unique, but maybe we'll talk through some of that together and come up with some good galaxy brain ideas tonight.
Yeah, there was certainly, I think, a lot more value earlier in the week. Everyone's takes have sort of sharpened and, a lot of values dried up. Of course, our boy Deontay Johnson remains a screaming value, but let's get into quarterback to start things off here. To me, I think the top six is pretty much correct in order. Does anyone stand out to you here before we get to any quarterback scroll down options?
Not really. Yeah. I'm not super into Jalen Hurts. I'm kind of worried about the Eagles passing game in general, just with the amount of pressure that the Browns generate and how rough Jalen Hurts has been against pressure over his career. But outside of that, yeah, I'm kind of happy with everyone else in the top six and mostly just looking for ways to get unique at other positions kind of around them this week.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been eyeing as well. I think, Kirk Cousins is maybe a little bit interesting. He's a guy I think I'll want some exposure to because, obviously this Carolina defense is such a disaster. Atlanta has been extremely pass heavy, a plus 13% pass rate over expectation over their last 2 games. Baker's tough with the game environment. CJ Stroud, same complaint. Jared Goff, Dallas is a major run funnel, so really not a lot of interest there. Justin Fields and AR are interesting, I suppose, if you're really desperate, but to me they're probably more 12-man draft options than 6-man draft options. So it is pretty tough, and then after that it gets pretty gnarly. Moving on to running back here, I think there are some more interesting values, especially given some of the injury news we got earlier today. Starting at the top, Ryan, is there anyone that stands out to you?
So just up at the top, I think Barkley and Henry are two of the best running back plays that we've seen all year. Them kind of next to CeeDee Lamb just creates like a easy top 3, like a very, very clear top 3 to where I just want exposure to all of them. So just kind of trying to draft them in ADP order. Don't want to be under on any of those players. After that, Kamara, I know pops as kind of a value compared to ADP in our projections. Taysom Hill is out. And as you've been kind of harping on all week, that does lower the efficiency quite dramatically of the Saints offense, as if we didn't need to be concerned enough about Spencer Rattler. But after that, I'm just willing to scroll down even more. J.K. Dobbins, I did not have much interest in on the main slate, but at RB 11 ADP in Battle Royale, where you're getting an ownership discount, he projects as well or better than pretty much everyone up to Kamara going ahead of him. Joe Alt is in. Rashawn Slater has the Q tag. But regardless, Dobbins is just going to take control of most of this backfield. He already did before the bye with just kind of kicking Gus Edwards to the curb. Edwards is out in this game, so it's only Kamani Vidal around to steal touches. He's been one of the most efficient running backs so far in the league. Obviously, you're worried about the game environment, but Dobbins is the type of player that can rip an 80-yard touchdown and kind of overcome the slow-paced nature of this offense. Obviously, have to shout Bucky Irving. He's the RB7 in our projections right now, with Rashad White assumed out. 40% or so of the main tournament had been drafted before White got is he doubtful? What it was today that came through.
Yeah,
So,
he's doubtful. So that almost always, I mean, extremely rare to see anyone, play through the doubtful designation.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, Irving's ADP is going to go up. I would take him in the third round. I've seen him go in the third round in drafts I've done in the last hour or so. He'll still slip to like the fifth sometimes, which is nice. But yeah, I'm totally fine just taking Irving and banking on that ownership discount that we're getting from earlier in the week. Other than that, I do have some interest in Joe Mixon. Yep. This is just kind of a game script type of call. Mixon, the first few weeks was getting pretty much all of the goal line work. I am just assuming the Texans are going to absolutely smash the Patriots this weekend. It leans a little bit more towards being a pass funnel, but I'm just not that concerned about it. I could see the Texans wanting to go run heavy without Nico Collins. So kind of like Mixon as a really low owned play. And then more speculatively, I have interest in Austin Eckler because Brian Robinson is looking very legitimately questionable. And Eckler on a per touch basis has actually been one of the most efficient running backs in the league this year as well. Obviously, I'm a little concerned about like Jeremy McNichols at the goal line. But as of now, in terms of, I think running back's the easiest way to get weird on this slate. So I'm willing to get down to Eckler some of the time, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm off Eckler outside of 12-team drafts, if only because last week Brian Robinson didn't play in the second half. Jeremy McNichols, 56% snap share, outcarried Austin Eckler 6-4. Eckler did have the one backfield target. So it could be a pretty gross split. I mean, McNichols is just a weird player. I believe he was a second-round pick in 2015 and then just never did anything his entire career. But it does seem like the team likes him. So yeah, I can see Eckler getting you there in some of these deeper fields, but I think for six mans, I really like the value that we have between the guys you already mentioned, Joe Mixon. I mean, Bucky Irving at RB12 is just such a smash. And then, J.K. Dobbins. I think Mixon and Dobbins especially, you won't see get steamed a ton this weekend. And those are picks that I love making in round 6. Moving on to wide receiver here. High end to wide receiver, I think, makes a ton of sense. I'm largely just drafting these guys in order to me. And you can see I've got my rankings off to the side here. I think CeeDee Lamb is pretty clearly my favorite 101. It took me most of the week to kind of come around to that idea. But I mean, the matchup for CeeDee is just incredible, right, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's unbelievable. So yeah, CeeDee's always better at home. They're at home. He absolutely shreds cover one. That's what the Lions are ranked top 5 in both of those. So yeah, kind of everything for Lamb is great. The Lions are the league's biggest pass funnel. So like all of these are reasons I'm really excited to find ways to pay up to CeeDee Lamb on the main slate. I do think the Cowboy stacks are going to be very, very popular just with kind of how the ADP shakes out. It's very easy to go Lamb and then Ferguson at the turn and then get Dak. Kind of, I think how I want to play it in BR is to just add Tolbert in instead of Ferguson if I'm doubling the Cowboys to at least get a little bit more unique. But yeah, it's very, very nice. Aside from that, yeah, I don't know that I break from the field a ton at the wide receiver position. Terry McLaurin kind of jumps out to me, but that's going to be, you're going to see a lot of Derrick Henry with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin in this contest. And I'm fine doing that. I'm going to do it. But yeah, the way I'm getting different is at the running back position largely. Deontay Johnson's a value. He always is. And yeah, nothing else to say on that really. Other than that, yeah, I'm kind of for scroll down receivers. I'm just kind of looking at ways that make stacks a little bit more unique. Like you can use like Jameson Williams just as the bring back for a Cowboy stack. You can throw. We are unsure on Christian Watson's health, I believe, but you can throw like a Dontavian Wicks into a Jordan Love stack just to get some more uniqueness. I do kind of like George Pickens. You mentioned Fields. I do think he's my favorite QB scroll down. I don't know how much of it I'm going to actually have. That this might be like 10% exposure or something across all my drafts. Yeah, it's just no one's playing Fields. We always know Fields is live for a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
We know there's one receiver that can hit a ceiling with Justin Fields. It's George Pickens. You noted on cashing points that Pickens, although the overall snap share was down a lot last week, he kind of was moving into the slot a lot more. Raiders have been a pretty big slot funnel. I don't know. It's scary because like George Pickens could play a 20% snap share this week, and it would not surprise me that much. Yeah, man, you Google George Pickens' name right now just to like see what's happening, and I don't know. Steelers media is kind of all over this guy. They have not been happy with how he's been acting recently.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Another name that I'll throw out there, well, Darnell Mooney, I think, is just overall a pretty great play. He's a top 10 wide receiver by expected fantasy points, I believe, since week 2, which is, pretty great usage for a guy that you're getting near the end of drafts. Amari Cooper is always worth mentioning. I believe he's the wide receiver 7 by expected fantasy points, but he's the wide receiver 46 by actual fantasy points. Ryan, I know you pointed out in one of our either early week conversations or maybe one of the docs that you sent me that the Eagles are particularly weak against the deep ball. So maybe this is a spot where Deshaun Watson can finally connect with Amari Cooper for tournaments. It's certainly tempting in like season-long redraft stuff. I mean, gosh, this guy's just driving you crazy. Let's move on to tight end here, and then we can review some contests and get into some of your guys' questions about the slate. Ryan, to me, I mean, these top 3 tight ends, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, all make a lot of sense. They're all very comparable plays to me. Do you have a lean between these 3, and does anyone else stand out to you?
Of the 3, I think I like McBride the least. I had one note in my stuff this week where McBride has like a 39% target share when Kyler Murray is pressured. But the Packers rank bottom 5 in all of our pressure rate stats. That's kind of one of the reasons that I really like the game for the main slate is that there's not going to be much pressure on either side. But I mean, in theory, that's going to funnel stuff a little bit more away from McBride. He's probably, he's not like a do not draft for me or anything though. Like if he's the 3rd tight end that's left, then I'll take him. Cause I do see that as a tier. And yeah, there's kind of another tier there with Laporta, with Kraft. Really want to get a top 5 tight end this week. I think if you don't, I think it's a fine place to scroll down. None of the options are actually any good. I guess maybe the only like super galaxy brain note I can give is schematically. So the Commanders play a lot of too high this year. And historically, Mark Andrews has absolutely shredded too high. And I'm not saying that you should play Mark Andrews. So yeah, I'm not saying that you should play Mark Andrews. But if you've drafted like 5 really chalky players and all you have left is the tight end, then I don't know if Andrews runs like a 50% route share and catches 2 touchdowns. There were 3 Ravens touchdowns to tight ends last week. None of them were to Mark Andrews. But I could see that happen, right? And that's all you need for a completely unowned tight end to be the nuts is 1 or even 2 touchdowns in what we expect to be a shootout environment. So I think this is maybe the one place I could talk myself into Mark Andrews exposure this week. I've talked too much about Mark Andrews, so kids, take this away from me.
It's incredibly gross, but I think there is a lot of volatility in the roles that we've seen from these tight ends. So that is an argument from Andrews. And I mean, we have Dallas Goedert as our tight end 6 in our projections. The projection gap between Andrews and Dallas Goedert is only about 2.5 points. So it's not like you're giving up a ton to go from a guy like Goedert to Andrews. That said, if I'm drafting 100 teams and say like the Wildcat or the main BR, I don't want more than 1 or 2 shares of Mark Andrews. I think anything beyond that might just be a bit too much for a tight end who could legitimately run 5 routes. I mean, it is so Jover for Mark Andrews for season-long drafters. It's pretty unreal and rather unfortunate, but the position does seem to be coming around a bit. All right, let's review some of these contests, and then we can hop into some of these drafts. Me and Ryan can answer some of your guys' questions. As I've said in previous weeks, If you take away one thing from this show, it should be to just skip the dog bowl entirely. The rake here is 50%. It is, I think, pretty clearly the worst contest available right now. If you really want to go to Dallas, or if it's overlaying by, a significant margin, I think then you can justify playing dog bowl qualifiers. Or if, you're maxing everything, you have a close to unlimited budget for Battle Royale, dog bowl qualifiers are great. Outside of that, though, I want no part in the dog bowl. Obviously, main BR, they did up the entry from $5 to $7. They also upped first place from 30K to 50K. So that does kind of reduce the, overall friendliness of the payout structure. It does make things a bit more punishing if you finish in, say, 10th compared to previous weeks. So that actually makes, and I've said this before, my favorite contest by a pretty good margin is the Wildcat. The Wildcat only pays the top 10%, but the payout structure within the top 10% is extremely flat. So the Wildcat's really, really great. You land, a top 1%, top 0.1% finish, you're going to get a really strong payout relative to a lot of other tournament structures across, Battle Royale, DFS, poker, what have you. So big fan of the Wildcat. I'm sure we'll draft a few Wildcat teams this week. Really like the bomb, really like the fullback dive. Both of these are smaller field contests where I think you want to correlate more. Same thing can be said for the victory formation. Deposit Kingdom Weekly League, another great contest. Smaller, only $10 entry, a 3 max with 2K to first. I think that's pretty nice. For the purposes of variance reduction, which is something you always have to keep in mind if you're playing these tournaments, I really don't care for these winner take alls. That said, if you are a good player, they do increase your edge to have all of the money go to first place. The only problem is that you're going to get there so infrequently that your risk of ruin is pretty significant if you're firing a lot of entries into these. Single entry $5 contest, that looks pretty strong. This $40 12-man draft contest is something that I really like. I'm a big fan of the 12-man drafts, and I'm sure I'll fire my entry on that either tonight or Sunday morning. Maybe we can get into one tonight. And then I believe the only other note that I had on these drafts was that I fired a couple entries in the Badge Bros Brawl, which are only 3-person drafts. And I noticed very little people were scrolling down, which was pretty surprising to me, considering I think the Badge Bros whole thing is, scroll the F down. That's their motto. When I was drafting these teams, no one was scrolling down. I ended up grabbing, I believe it was a Jordan Love stack last week that almost took the tournament down, if I remember correctly. I think I ended up finishing in 15th, but I had a chance. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Probably a pretty massive advantage to just scroll down and grab, stack the QB 6 or whatever. Dak Prescott's probably an even better option in a tournament like that than he would be in the traditional 6-man drafts. But let's start out with my favorite tournament on the week. We can hop into a Wildcat here, and while we wait for this to start, can get to a couple of the questions in the chat. Always appreciate everybody commenting and hanging out with us on a Friday night here. Ryan, we already got one that says, do I start Wicks or Slayton in my flex this week? Obviously, if Christian Watson plays, I think it's pretty clearly Slayton. Even so, I might give a slight lean to Slayton. Do you want to tie break there?
Yeah, Slayton was unironically in the Malik Neighbors role last week. I don't remember exactly what the first read target share was, but it was Malik Neighbors-esque. Slayton, I have always kind of thought was an underrated player. He was always someone that kind of popped in the first read target share stuff. I would go Slayton.
Yeah, the team has always kind of hated Slayton for some reason. I forget if it was last year or 2 years ago when they basically benched him for the beginning of the season. He wasn't playing at all. And then he sort of slowly came on because he is just clearly one of their most talented wide receivers. Another person asked Josh Allen or Jared Goff this week. I'd pretty clearly lean Allen there. I really don't think it's particularly close. Should I pick up Tank Dell? I have Debo, Amon-Ra, Godwin. Yeah, I would add Tank Dell to the end of that bench. I mean, especially with Nico Collins on IR. I don't think this is the week to play Tank Dell particularly. I know the schematic matchup with New England being a little bit more man heavy is favorable to Tank, but I'm just a bit worried about volume overall. I think future weeks they'll have some better game environments there. Yeah, Ryan, anything to add on those questions as we come up on our pick 106 at the turn here?
Yeah, no, I mean, not really. Yeah, I'm in on Tank Dell as a season long bet, as a dynasty bet, not necessarily this week in this matchup in this game environment. But yeah, Scott tried to talk me into him a little bit. It's like, oh, Christian Gonzalez is probably going to be on Stephon Diggs instead. And I'm like, yeah, I can't play Tank Dell until he looks better. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ryan, how do you want to start off here? I'm thinking maybe an AJ Brown and then a running back, something like that. Well, I know you're a little down on Hurts, but I do really like AJ Brown here as a one-off play. I mean, he's crushed single high coverage, and Cleveland just will not get out of single high. They're running single high at 75% clip. They did so last year. So I think that's pretty strong. And then do you have any preference between, either Jaden Reed, London, or these three running backs available?
I'd go Jaden Reed, honestly. And the part of the reason is I think it's easier to scroll down at running back. Kamara, Bijan, Gibbs, all project as strong plays, and I'm fine with all of them. But yeah, when I'm weighing that against like a J.K. Dobbins or a Joe Mixon versus whatever an Amari Cooper or a Jameson Williams or something like that, then yeah, towards the back, I'm just going to go wide receiver heavy, I think, this week.
Yeah, and especially, I think in these Wildcat drafts, if you are going to see Bucky Irving still fall to round 6, it's going to happen in a draft like this where, maybe drafters aren't quite as informed as they would be in like a Battle Royale or some of these higher dollar buy-in drafts. Now, some of you guys might be wondering why my screen looks a bit different than the normal Underdog screen. It's because we have a fantastic overlay tool from bestballoverlay.com. It shows you your current drafted exposure. So I can see, I've taken, I believe this is from my first like 20 or 25 so drafts, taken a ton of Chris Godwin, 52% Godwin. It also shows you the spreads and totals and weather for these games. So it's a super, super helpful overlay while you draft. One of my favorite features is the combinatorial exposure. So if I click on both these guys, I can see that I actually don't have a team yet where I've drafted both AJ Brown and Jaden Reed. Again, you can find this tool over at bestballoverlay.com and promo code PARTY. Again, that's promo code PARTY, gives you $10 off a month. So pretty great tool. I've talked to the founders. They're really great guys. And I think they're doing a really good job helping people draft smarter teams. I think especially if you're a volume drafter, doing 20, 30 teams, this is a very, very helpful tool. So would check that out. And then I would also check out, and I will promote this again at the end of the show, but our Discord, the Fantasy Points Discord, a lot of the best channels are paywalled. However, the Underdog Battle Royale channel is totally free. And my plan for Saturday afternoon was to drop a little surprise in there for the people in our free Battle Royale channel in the manner of a ranking CSV that should help with your drafting. Obviously, you guys can see our rankings are on the screen there, and it certainly helps me quickly identify values relative to our projections. Our rankings right now are just largely a blend of our projections mixed with ADP, so you aren't reaching too much or encouraged to reach too much by the rankings, and I found them super, super helpful. So definitely check out our Discord as well. The Fantasy Points Discord is a really fun place, and it's a good place to get Ryan's attention and ask him questions because he's a full-time employee now, so he has nothing better to do than to answer your questions in our Discord. Ryan, coming up on the 306 turn here. I kind of like Jalen Hurts. I don't mind that. We could also go after Jordan Love since we already have Jaden Reed. And then we probably want to take a tight end as well. What do you think here?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think it makes sense to take care of tight end here. I'm more Love over Hurts this week. So yeah, I'm fine with Bowers. I'm fine with McBride if you want to set up the mini. Either is cool with me.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to go with Bowers. I've already taken a good amount of Trey McBride, as you can see from our lovely overlay tool there. And then for this next pick, I think probably makes the most sense to go running back. And if we want to go Jordan Love, we could grab a share of Tony Pollard, grab a late round running back, and then grab Love. You think that sounds good?
Yeah, no, that's cool with me. And yeah,
right.
We'll just scroll on the last running back. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, like Ryan pointed out, and I totally agree with this. I think the scroll down options this week are a lot stronger at running back. And, generally what we've seen is that you do want a few more 2 running back builds than 3 wide receiver builds. So I generally do lean more into running back exposures than I do wide receiver exposures, at least in my flex position here. But this team's shaping up pretty well. Ryan, I'm curious what you think, because on caching points, we were a bit split. Me and Graham really liked the game environment for Green Bay, Arizona. Hilo, who is a Packers fan and, seems to know the Cardinals really well because he lives in the Phoenix area. He was a bit down on the game environment. Where do you fall on Packers Cardinals? Because that's probably going to end up being one of the more important points of the slate.
So I on one hand, I agree with what Hilo is saying, where there is definitely no schematic edge here with the Cardinals. Also, the pass rate over expectation for the Cardinals has not been great the last couple weeks. There's two ways that this game shoots out and goes off, right? It's either the Packers push the Cardinals and they have no choice but to drop back a ton of times, or it's what we saw earlier in the season where Marvin Harrison just gets loose kind of immediately for a long play or two, and that's what kind of drives the game environment to shoot out. I'm fairly optimistic on it. I guess I would just say I know the way. It's not going to be the Cardinals pushing the Packers. I'd put it that way. So yeah, I definitely rank it below like the Cowboys Lions game, for example, or the Ravens Commanders game. But I like it just as like a number 3 there. I think there's plenty of chance for it to kind of pop off.
Yeah, I think relative to ownership, it really starts to come up for me, especially in like DFS where no one really seems to want to play Kyler. Certainly tempted there. It does look like we lost out on a chance at our boy Bucky Irving, but we will be able to get Jordan Love. And then either Hubbard, Connor, Dobbins, Mixon. I'd lean towards Dobbins. I haven't taken enough of Dobbins yet. And I think especially in half PPR, he feels like a really nice bet. Any objections, Ryan?
Yeah, no objections at all to J.K. Dobbins. Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. All right. So our first team here in the Wildcat, it's Jordan Love, Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Brown, Jaden Reed, and Brock Bowers. I think that's a pretty strong team. We got a nice scroll down option in Dobbins. We have really strong projected values overall. We got one of the top 3 tight ends. Yeah, I feel really good about that. So we can look for a new draft here. Someone mentioned would be nice if Singletary was down another week. Would love to play Tracy over Javonte to fill in for JT this week. Yeah, I think especially in like a redraft type situation, I think you probably should just go with Javonte on the off chance that Singletary, does end up playing. Would you disagree with that at all? It's always tough with these staggered start times. Obviously the Giants are playing Sunday Night Football, Denver playing earlier in the day.
Yeah, no, in that scenario, because we would not get Tracy news likely before the Broncos kickoff. Are they? No, they're the 4:25, so we might, right? But yeah, no, I think if you don't know, you just play Javonte. The difference in projection is not going to be that significant. And I mean, Javonte's role has gotten a bit better without Tyler Beatty. I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name. I've been told I do it wrong, but
it's Bidet, I believe.
Bidet. Okay, like the thing that you hook up to the toilet. Okay,
exactly.
Okay,
like the toilet device. All right, only need one more here. So this is the $25. I've already forgotten the name of the tournament, so let me open Underdog in another tab. But this is the $25 5 max, which is one of my favorite tournaments because it's smaller, so it means you can really jack up your correlation and give yourself a pretty decent edge here. Let me just pull this up so I get the name right in case anyone else wants to hop in. Yeah, the $25 fullback dive. It's a 5 entry max, 2K to first for the main slate, 456 total entrants, 10K prize pool. Certainly one of my favorite tournaments on the slate. Ryan, I'm curious for probably a bit more of a DFS take than Battle Royale, but certainly applicable. Do you have any interest in the Lions pass game in this extreme run funnel matchup? Because it feels to me like they're being drafted as if they're not playing against the biggest run funnel in the NFL. Yeah, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm probably not going to have that much Amon-Ra this week. Kind of for that reason. The schematic stuff is also kind of tough too. That basically Cowboys play a lot of single high, And that is actually bad for every member of the Lions passing game aside from Sam Laporta. So and that's always a little bit of a tough sell
for sure.
Yeah. So that only supports more why I think the Lions go very run heavy. I mean, Laporta certainly at the tight end position, that especially in like a BR, that makes me like him enough to consider him at least in that tier, like with Tucker Kraft, as opposed to just ignoring him. Like I am going to have Laporta exposure in BR this week, kind of just for that reason. But yeah, I don't know. Like theoretically, we should like Goff doubles this week, right? Because easily the best just overall game environment for a quarterback that projects decently well is going to be very low owned, easy to double him. Like, yeah, theoretically we should like it, but I have trouble talking myself into it just because I'm very like blindered on how I think this game's going to play out. Maybe that's a mistake to be so confident in a certain game script. I know Chris Wecht always kind of scolds us about that whenever we are telling him to change projections because of how we think a game's going to go.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, and that does kind of make me want to lean into a Goff double, at least for this team, just to kind of see what we end up with. So why don't we go Amon-Ra? I hate the 104 this week. It's probably my least favorite position. I'm not going to end up with much Amon-Ra overall because I generally prefer either grabbing, a guy like Gibbs there or, reaching for a stack that I'd rather have. But Ryan, I do think you made a good point. I feel abnormally confident that Detroit's going to rely on their ground game. And while I think that, probably happens in the vast majority of times you play this game out, there are certainly scenarios where the Detroit passing game goes crazy and Goff ends up being, a top 3 quarterback. Amon-Ra ends up being, either the overall wide receiver 1 or right there. And then, another guy like J-Mo or Sam Laporta gets you close. So I certainly don't mind a Goff double, even though I do think on the whole, the Detroit passing attack is being a bit overdrafted in Battle Royale. So ended up with Amon-Ra for our first pick here. For our next pick, Jahmyr Gibbs would be interesting. That would be another way we could sort of stack the Lions element of this game, and then we could get like a Jake Ferguson run back, come back with Goff. We could also just take the highest projected play in Kamara, who's really popping in our projections, but obviously I have concerns about offensive efficiency. What do you think here?
I would have liked Gibbs, but he's gone now. Yeah, I think Kamara makes sense. He's kind of at the end of the running back tier here, and we're going to get cheap access to QB and potentially to tight end as well, or to JMO. Yeah. So yeah, I think Kamara makes the most sense.
Yeah, not a build that I'm like super thrilled with, but I think especially if you're like me and you're going to draft, 50, maybe 100 teams, you don't want every team to look the same, right? And at the very least, as a variance reduction strategy, I certainly don't mind sort of hedging my, my bets that this. Well, I do think this is, sort of the ultimate run funnel in Dallas, and while I do think Detroit is, the ultimate pass funnel, maybe it doesn't quite shake out that way. And I would imagine there's a bit more fragility on the Dallas run funnel side than there would be on the Detroit pass funnel side, especially against Dallas, a team that just can't run the ball at all. So I think next pick here, Ferguson would probably be our best bet. I mean, obviously we're going to end up needing a tight end. We could also look at Laporta, but I think I like the upside of J-Mo a bit more. Do you have a lean for this team at all?
Yeah, they're both really tough. J-Mo, I think, is the type of player where he can run after the catch and he can make huge plays if he's just kind of schemed for. And they haven't done that in every game. So that, yeah, it's always a little scary. I guess they've schemed for Laporta in 0 games, though, would be the counterpoint to that. So yeah, no, I think we should probably lean Jamo, and we can snag Ferguson here. And then, yeah, kind of take highest projected at running back, since we're probably unique enough with a Goff double, or yeah, we could just go up to Bucky Irving at running back if he hasn't already been drafted.
I mean, I'd figure Goff.
Oh no, he hasn't. Okay.
are going to be, and we did lose out on Ferguson, so we might be looking at a Laporta team. But either way, Goff doubles, I think, are going to be pretty underowned. He's going QB 10, which is just too late overall. Do you still want to grab a tight end here? Bowers, McBride?
I think we need to double Goff, so probably not. So yeah, just give me GMO. Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, you're
right. I'm gonna take McBride. Yeah. And then we can go JMO because there's just no one really left on the Cowboys side. I mean, I guess we could grab Tolbert, but I'd rather have Tolbert within Dak stacks, and it is a bit of a reach. We can get better values at the running back position, higher projected plays at the running back position. So, what do you think should be our move here? We could grab our running back and then come back around to the JMO Goff stack, or we could start going after that now. I think running back would probably make the most sense, but yeah, I mean, like a Bucky Irving.
I would just take Bucky Irving here, honestly. Because not worried about not worried about quote unquote reaching on Bucky Irving. He projects better than all these other running backs. Yeah.
And it's just such a good spot. I mean, New Orleans could just be a complete disaster this week. They've already shown that, despite Irving's size, they're willing to give him inside the 5 carries, even at the expense of a guy like Rachaad White, who is a notably bigger back. So, Bucky Irving is just such a good play this week.
And I also think this is an okay, normally I try not to play my running backs against each other. I think with Kamara, it's kind of fine because he's not game script sensitive at all, right? Kamara can catch 8 checkdowns from Spencer Rattler this week, and Bucky can still get there, and it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know that there's like a negative correlation there, like you might see with most running back pairings.
Yeah, I think if Baltimore was playing Arizona, you would never want Derrick Henry and James Conner on the same team, basically. But in a game where both these guys can catch passes, and especially a game where we anticipate New Orleans to be, playing from behind, like you said, I mean, Kamara could get peppered with targets, especially, Rattler. Every scouting report on Rattler says when the pocket gets a little iffy, when there is pressure, he's pretty either mistake prone or just, quick to get rid of the ball. Those passes will go to Alvin Kamara. Tampa Bay has not been super efficient at generating pressure, but they do blitz a ton. And I think even just the presence of those blitzes, even if they aren't super effective, which I kind of expect that they will be since the New Orleans offensive line hasn't looked great. I think we should take Goff here. JMO actually already went, so we're only going to get a single. I guess we could come back around with a Tolbert, which
that feels fine. Yeah.
I wouldn't hate. I'm not in love with Tolbert in this format. I like him a lot more for DFS purposes, but I think for this team, it's totally fine. So we will
Deontay just projects. So if Deontay's there, he projects so well. I feel
he does.
I have a hard time justifying Tolbert just because it's a bring back.
Deontay,
I don't know.
13.1. We have Tolbert for 9.7. So almost, it's a 3.5 point gap. That's fairly notable. And we do have the Goff stack, so we have reached enough. I think you're right. We should probably just go with the best value play here in Deontay. Although both picks I think would be more than fine. And Ryan, I mean, I'm addicted to 45% Deontay exposure in Battle Royale anyway, because he always goes way too late. He's, I think, our wide receiver 7 by underdog score in our projections, and nobody wants anything to do with him for some reason.
I realized I need to stop writing negative notes about his schematic matchup in advanced matchups, because I've done it for 2 weeks in a row. I was correct last week. That didn't happen last week. It's basically the same schematic matchup this week, and I wrote that up in the article. Scott Barrett decided to post advanced matchups on r/fantasy football on the fantasy football subreddit this week, and I can't. By the way, advanced matchups free this week. Go check it out on FantasyPoints.
Check that out. It's a fantastic article. I forgot to DM you. I didn't get to it until this morning, but I mean, so damn good. And I can't believe I'm one of the few people who has the article early or has access to the article early. I should be hopping in there and just tailing the prop bets before the public moves the lines, because you've been killing it with the prop bets and advanced matchups. It's a great piece.
Okay. I have two thoughts while you look for a contest. I'll talk for like the next few minutes.
Sounds good.
So first, I don't want to forget what I was going to say about the fantasy football subreddit. So I need to stop saying negative things about Deontay because I'm realizing it's making people just not want to play him in redraft. I'm like, guys, we have Deontay Johnson projected as a top 10 wide receiver this week, and that you should not be playing like Michael Wilson over him. Or I'm sorry, like I love getting nerdy about the schematic stuff, but it's not like it's projection first. Like this is we're looking for an edge on ownership in DFS and in battle royales. This is not like a justification for benching Deontay because you're mad he drops the ball. And anyways, what was the other point there? You were talking about advanced
prop
matchups.
Bets.
Oh, the prop bets. Yes. So I need to take that advice that you just gave, which is like actually doing the prop bets early, because half the time I will just submit the article at 11 p.m. midnight, whenever it is, and be like, okay, I'm going to pass out now and wake up on Friday, forget to take my own props. And pretty much every time without fail that I do that, I wake up and all the lines are 2 yards higher than they were when I hit submit. And that's pretty tilting that I'm not even getting the best value on my own props and my own picks. But yeah, if you're an advanced matchups reader and that you've ever noticed that and that has annoyed you, just know that I'm actually riding with you there. I'm not front running you on any of these bets.
Wow. So humble from Ryan Heath, just writing up the best props and then not moving the lines himself so that you, the people, can do it. We drew the 104 again, which just absolutely sucks. I would be pretty surprised if we got Derrick Henry here, but I would also be very happy if we got Derrick Henry. We do not get Derrick Henry. I don't want to take another Amon-Ra build, at least for this stream. I'm sure I'll draft more on my own. So what do you say we maybe go either lean into AJ Brown or Jaden Reed here? We could also build a Lamar team. What are your thoughts?
Let's do a Lamar team. I haven't done any yet, but I think I don't love the ADP, but just how well he projects in this game environment. It's hard to fully ignore him. I don't know though. I don't think you never have to stack Lamar. Yeah, I mean you want to in a spot like this. But yeah, I'm not. I think you said on Cashing Points that you were into Zay Flowers, right? So talk to me about that. I think I was not as excited.
Okay, so the splits for Zay Flowers based on usage are basically are pretty insane. In the 3 games where Baltimore has had to throw, Zay Flowers has been top 10 in expected fantasy points in each of those 3 weeks. His usage has been awesome. In the 2 games where Derrick Henry has gotten over 20 carries, Zay Flowers has done absolutely nothing. I mean, you'd actually rather play Michael Wilson in those games. So I think that's the sort of interesting angle with this game, where if Baltimore gets pushed, if they have to throw like we saw last week, Zay Flowers is going to see really, really strong usage. And he really isn't too priced up. So I think like in a draft like this, my sort of ideal run out would be grabbing a guy like Terry McLaurin, hoping Jaden Daniels shows up, but that Lamar Jackson outscores him, and then grabbing Zay Flowers. What do you think?
I think McLaurin is mandatory on the Lamar teams because the Ravens have to be pushed for this to happen because as we've seen, if they're not, they're perfectly content to just run Derrick Henry literally all day. They're top 5 in run rate when leading by 7 or more points. So I think it's very hard for me to imagine Lamar getting there without a commander also getting there.
Both of those players are going in the early 20s. So I'm kind of thinking we take a guy like Gibbs here. And then
I like it. And then go with them. Yeah,
I think that's solid. So Gibbs is interesting. I know, Hilo mentioned, and I do largely agree that Jahmyr Gibbs, it's a 50-50 split with David Montgomery, which even in the most valuable backfield in fantasy, which the Lions are by a pretty decent margin, a 50-50 split really nukes the upside of these guys. The one thing that I'll say on Gibbs is that obviously as, the pass catching role is there, Montgomery's still getting targeted, but they clearly lean Gibbs. The inside the 20 role is awesome. He's averaging 5 opportunities per game inside the 20. That's 4th among all running backs, 2 more than he averaged last year. That's roughly on par with Saquon Barkley. I think the touchdown upside with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs is pretty underrated overall. Anything to add on Gibbs or the Lions back?
Yeah, I mean, he's also just so part of the reason there is actually like through the air. He's getting a lot of targets in the red zone. I know I had that as a note in the everything report maybe a week or two ago. But yeah, I mean, he's just an efficient player in a high total game environment where we think they're going to run a lot. So yeah, you need the touchdown variance to hit for you. But yeah, that's the case with any player here, guys. Like you do need your players to score touchdowns if you want to win tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, and especially on a half PPR site with no bonuses like Underdog, you'll see guys on DraftKings, kind of get you there if they get 180 yards, 10 catches, something like that with no touchdowns. That is possible, especially in half PPR though. You need the touchdowns. All right, I say we grab Flowers here, and then we can hope Terry McLaurin comes back around to us. I know one of the most bullish notes for McLaurin was that Baltimore is fairly weak to the deep ball, and McLaurin's deep roll is really, really strong. Ryan, what were you going to say, and anything to add to my McLaurin analysis?
I was going to say something really dumb about if McLaurin gets sniped, how we should take Eckler. Ignoring that, I'll talk about McLaurin instead. Baltimore, right, top 5, top 6 in yards per game allowed against the deep ball. McLaurin since week 3, so kind of since the Commanders really opened this offense up and started letting Daniels throw to guys who weren't running backs behind the line of scrimmage. Since then, McLaurin second in fantasy points per game on throws 15 or more yards downfield, third in expected fantasy points per game on those throws. It's literally like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Darnell Mooney that rank with him. So yeah, the deep roll is just amazing. Something there kind of a lot of these like deep ball merchants this week in DFS that are popping. McLaurin is one of them. Amari Cooper, who you mentioned as a scroll down earlier, who I completely missed in BR, but I think that's really sharp, is a good one there too. So yeah, that's just been swirling around my head all week, is that I want to, not that I want to rely on those guys, but that those players can wreck slates, regardless of how annoyed you get if they're on your redraft team.
Yeah, absolutely. We had someone say that they traded Ayuk and Chuba for Brian Thomas Jr. and Joe Mixon. How do you like that rest of season and redraft? I think I like that a lot, especially because Jonathan Brooks is going to come back. And I don't think Brooks is going to be the Exodia that Scott Barrett billed him as, if only because Chuba Hubbard has been playing really well. But obviously, Jonathan Brooks is going to eat into Chuba's workload a decent bit. I mean, I think it's extremely likely that he's a notably better player than a guy like Miles Sanders. And then, you're getting, a fantastic young wide receiver. You're getting Joe Mixon, who, saw great usage before his injury. Do you disagree at all, Ryan?
No, not at all. Well, I disagree with you on, I think Scott has kind of, let go of the Brooks take way too quickly. It takes literally 2 weeks it takes 2 weeks in a row of Chuba Hubbard not looking like amazing for Jonathan Brooks to suddenly get more involved. Does he get 90% of the backfield? Maybe not, but I don't know. Are we really sitting here in week 6 and saying Chuba Hubbard is completely inevitable to hold on to a backfield the entire season? Like, I don't know. That's where you guys lose me. Like, I get that he's looked pretty good the last few weeks. He's getting the utilization. But in literally week 2, we were saying, oh man, this Chuba thing didn't work. Or was it week 1 when Miles Sanders nearly outsnapped him and Hubbard was averaging like 1.8 yards per carry? Like this stuff can flip so quickly in terms of both our perception and the team's perception. So yeah, the calls to get Brooks more involved will be so fast if Hubbard like fumbles on the goal line once. Like, so many things can happen. I just am still, maybe it's just the Brooks bags talking on every IR slot on all my redraft teams that aren't doing well right now. But yeah, I'm into it. Sorry, I keep talking over the picks.
No, you're good. You're good. We were going to end up taking Bowers there anyway. He was the last of the big 3 tight ends available, and it just came time for a tight end pick here. We're looking at running back. I think we know our favorite options. Do you want to go? I mean, we really haven't grabbed any scroll down options. Our lowest ADP player is Terry McLaurin at 23.7. So probably want to go with like a Dobbins or a Mixon over a Tony Pollard, just to be a little bit more unique with this build. Do you have preference between the two? I know we've already taken some Dobbins. I want to see what our projections say.
I think Dobbins is slightly ahead in the projections, but I do think if either of these guys gets steamed up, it's going to be Dobbins, I'd say. So I think Mixon is like the extremely safe low ownership, or the lowest ownership.
Yeah,
so on this team, I'd probably lean that direction.
Anybody with a Q tag is always going to have their ADP get fairly depressed, and everything that I've seen on Mixon seems to be pretty encouraging. I'd probably put the odds at like 70-80% that he plays. It seems quite likely. All right, so final team there ended up being Lamar Jackson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Mixon, Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin, Brock Bowers. I think that's a pretty strong team. We got the correlation I was looking for. I generally want to lean a bit more into like something like a double stack in these sort of smaller field tournaments. Again, this is the $25 5 max. We ripped another one of those. But, when you're drafting Lamar Jackson, you really either don't need to pair him with anybody, or you don't need to pair him with, more than a single pass catcher. And we know the entire Ravens pass offense is going towards Zay Flowers. So certainly like
could have gone with the Mark Andrews double. I'm telling you, that was the spot for it, Jake.
I'm not doing that on stream. That's irresponsible, brother. We did have another question in the chat. Half PPR, drop Waddle or Wicks to stash Juju. Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd do that. Ryan, do you have a take? Tua's coming back, so Waddle's going to be viable. I guess Wicks is a little bit iffier if Christian Watson comes back, right?
Yeah, that's actually really tough for me. I think the tiebreaker for me is I think Wicks is good, and I don't think Juju is good. So that I'm just going to keep Wicks probably, but you can absolutely justify that with the role that we just saw for Juju. I mean, he didn't particularly impress me when I was watching the game. Like 50 of those yards came when Marshawn Lattimore like tripped over his feet, and he just kind of ran across the field, like bobbled the interception in the end zone. So yeah, I don't know if like the Juju in the Rashee Rice role is like as safe and locked in as some people around the industry have seemed to think this week.
I mean, Travis Kelce is the real Rashee Rice.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't buy
Kelce
a single spike week from Juju, whose yards per out run has basically fallen off a cliff since he was like 24. He had 2 good seasons to start his career, and then it's just been, absolutely nothing from him. So, I mean, you could still see some decent volume from Juju, but I think, real spike week potential is very unlikely, and it's not like you want to, chase that too much in redraft anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, if Watson pulls a hamstring, or if we just go out and it's Wicks on 80% of the routes and Watson barely playing, which is I maybe not likely after last week's result, but I think it's more likely you come out of this weekend like, man, I can't believe I dropped Wicks, than man, I can't believe I didn't pick up Juju. But yeah, that might just be me.
Yeah, exactly. We hopped in another $25. We actually drew the 101. I would have been tilting my face off if we got another 104 here. So happy to see that. Fantasy Dog Pound in this one. Shout out my boy Fantasy Dog Pound. Great YouTube channel, by the way. If you guys are into BR drafting, I believe he only does BR and best ball type stuff. He had a really good show like a month ago with Billy Jones, where they sort of talked about some of the overarching, data and strategy points involved in BR. And that certainly informed some of my decision-making for, my own drafts and, some of the stuff that I talk about on this show. So definitely worth checking out, but we got the 101, Ryan. So we're definitely taking CD. I think I want to go with a DAC team here, and we can kind of implement sort of what we were talking about earlier in the show and go with a Tolbert team instead of a Ferguson team, because as you said, with the way ADP shakes out, everyone who double stacks Dak is going to be double stacking him with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. Anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think that's just the way to play it this week. I don't have it's not as if there aren't any other tight ends or whatever that you can't add that can't beat Jake Ferguson. Are you interested in bringbacks here? It's very unlikely you're getting Gibbs. David Montgomery ADP is kind of steamed up, in my opinion, in BR, probably above where it should be. But I think that's just the ease and the popularity of bringing back a Lion in those DAC doubles. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe the way to do it is to go Laporta on the DAC double teams. I would think that would be a lot less popular.
I would think so as well. I guess the biggest question would be, how do we want to sort of format this? So we're going to be drafting 12, 13, and then our next picks will be 24, 25. I have seen Dak go as early as, pick 22 or so. So that does make me a little uneasy, but I'm also not sure I want to reach, at the 2-6, 3-1 turn. Yeah. What do you think here?
Yeah, it's difficult because Tolbert is just going to be our last pick.
Yep.
We have to. What's Laporta's ADP?
Laporta is, let's see, 28.4. So we might be able to wrap both of those into our final pair of picks. Although
I think we tried that, and if it doesn't work, then it's fine. We have a CD Lamb team we can do something else with.
Okay.
Like
all right.
This is the I didn't even pay attention when you said is this the Battle Royale tournament? Is this a large field?
This is smaller field. So we do want to amp up our correlation a bit more here.
Oh yeah, never mind then. Who cares? We can reach in small field. That's totally fine. The only your Kamara is like the only projection you're kind of sacrificing. So maybe we take him and does that work?
I wouldn't hate I wouldn't hate taking Dak here just so that we don't get sniped.
I think you go Kamara Dak, and I'm not that concerned about the projection anywhere else.
We know who we want to end the draft with anyway, so I think I'm fine with that. We've gotten cooked, Ryan, previously in the comments for some of our aggressive reaches. I will say that last week the team that we reached, we did make notable reaches on. It was both Burrow and T. Higgins, right? So that we didn't get sniped in a BR draft. That ended up being a top 0.003% team that I believe if Derrick Henry had scored on that final run, it would have finished top 40 in the Battle Royale, ended up finishing like 120th, something like that in a 68,000 entry field. So, and I did the math. We didn't actually give up really anything in terms of projection, and in terms of actual score, we outperformed the best player available. So there are certain instances where reaching in these drafts makes a lot of sense, especially if you think ADP is inefficient, which based off of our projections, we kind of know it is, right? Anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, you summed it up. And I think especially not even just like with ADP being inefficient, it's hard for ADP to be perfectly efficient, honestly, like last week, and kind of on maybe to a slightly lesser extent this week, where there are like 11 or 12 options that very clearly project the best kind of heads over tails. What is the turn of phrase there? I'm sorry. Head and shoulders. That's what I was looking for. Yes. Kind of head and shoulders above every other play. Yeah, you probably don't want to be reaching out of those plays. So where I say, okay, Kamara projects among the best players on the slate, we probably shouldn't pass on him to reach for a stack. But after that, man, yeah, once it's flattened out, just do all your like galaxy brain game theory stuff. Who cares between half a point of projection?
Yep. Yeah, totally right there with you. Let's see here. So we're coming up on round 4, round 5, right at the turn here. We've got Dak, Kamara, and CD. Do you want to? We should probably do Laporta before Tolbert, because Tolbert's going largely undrafted. Laporta has a higher ADP. And then we're also looking at a running back selection. I guess Montgomery would be viable. He has fallen 10 spots. I wasn't, in love with it, but it would be decent correlation. We could also just grab a guy like Pollard. We could grab Bucky Irving. What are your thoughts?
I'm not super concerned about uniqueness here, just because I think Tolbert's going to be unique. So
okay,
you're fine just doing Bucky. I think I like Bucky straight up as a play over Montgomery.
I do. I do too, honestly. So
yeah.
let's just go Bucky. And then we will end up with Dak, Kamara, Bucky, CD, Laporta, and hope that we can land on Tolbert with our last pick. This is a team I like a lot, especially just because Bucky is going undrafted. Probably not nearly as much in these smaller field like $25 tournaments, but the fullback dive is, I'm looking at it right now, 65% full. Bucky probably hasn't been drafted in half the drafts at least, because that news came out at 2 p.m. today, something like that. So yeah, I love Bucky Irving as a pick. I think especially we've harped on this previously, but especially when you get these guys where late breaking injury news means that 40% of the field has completely ignored them until just now. Those are the guys you really want to hammer, and I think can justifiably reach for more than the average play.
Yeah, no, I don't care about I don't care about like the closing line value or whatever in Battle Royale. I care way more about the ownership advantage that you're getting with the late risers, quote unquote, like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be cool if they could figure out a way kind of in like the rules of the format to reward that. Like that's sick if you end up on like Bucky Irving on Wednesday or something and White gets ruled out when kind of no one else is on it, but you're just not rewarded that much for it, even if you make like those types of calls. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think drafting a guy like Bucky Irving on a Wednesday, even at round 6, is just incredibly risky because, he might only get a 40% share of the backfield pie, 50% if Rachaad White is healthy. So yeah, it would be, I'm sure there's a way you could format a game where maybe you could reward those early drafters who take a bit more of a stand, but with the way Battle Royale shakes out, it just doesn't really happen. Bink King said, love you, Bink King. I've noticed you in almost all my streams lately. Big fan of all the comments Bink King has left. Dowdle is sneaky. Where do you fall on Dowdle? Because I really haven't been looking at him much. He just doesn't really feel like a guy I'm gonna land on against, a Detroit defense that's allowing they're a massive run funnel. So it's trying to remember the number off the top of my head. I can't. You want to talk about Rico Dowdle while I struggle to remember the pass rate over expectation numbers?
Yeah, I'm pulling up the schedule adjusted right now. That's so yeah, the Lions' second fewest schedule adjusted to opposing running backs. Why with Dowdle would be my question. I don't have any particular conviction in Dowdle's talent. I don't think anybody should. If they're going to be playing Hunter Lupke on passing down some of the time, it's just not what I look for in a play. I don't know. He could fall into the end zone 2 times. I suppose that's possible. Maybe that's like the real leverage off of all the popular Cowboys doubles.
Oh man,
yeah, that's like the closest I can get to making a case for it.
Yeah, obviously I stumbled through this previously, but the Lions defense has been the strongest pass funnel in the NFL, plus 8.1% pass rate over expectation. Every team, Brett Whitefield has noted this, huge Lions fan, our number one film guy, our lead data charter. Every single team has abandoned the run against the Lions. I anticipate Dallas to do the same thing. They haven't been particularly efficient running the ball. Yeah, I don't like Dowdle much. I was looking at our projections here. He is our RB18 by half PPR projections. A guy like Bucky Irving projects about 4 points better and is our RB7. So, I just straight up like Bucky Irving significantly more. I think in these super large fields, though, you can justify a guy like Rico Dowdle. He's not projecting bad enough to the point that I think it's a ridiculous play, but it's just not one I'm going to land on myself when there are, you're not gaining a huge ownership edge on a guy like Dowdle compared to, a Joe Mixon or even a Bucky Irving, who's obviously going to get steamed pretty significantly. Ryan, what do you say we rip one more of these Wildcat drafts and we make it a bit of a weird team? Maybe we can get like a Justin Fields, George Pickens type build as we wrap things up while we wait for this to fill. Any other questions? Definitely drop them in the chat. Someone said, and this is all caps, so it must be urgent. I need one running back, one flex. Pollard, Monty, Kirk, Tolbert, or Bowers. PPR, starting St. Brown, McLaurin, Mason, McBride. I think your running back's going to be Pollard, I would think. Let me check here. Yeah. We have Pollard with a slightly better projection. So I would lean Pollard. Flex is a bit trickier. To me, it's more Tolbert versus Bowers. Do you have a lean there?
Yeah, I don't. This one is very toss up for me. I'd probably go Tolbert. Yeah, just as we've been saying, just the game environment and how we're very confident that it's gonna go. So yeah, the more I say this, the more I can just feel the 2 Rico Dowdle touchdowns coming up.
Rico Dowdle drops 45 DraftKings points.
Yeah,
and ends us all. The show gets canceled because of our Rico Dowdle takes. I did want to see where the industry was at on both Dowdle and Bucky. Bink King is certainly making me think. Okay, we drew the 105, which is slightly more preferable to me than the 104. Still not ideal. I mean, I think the top 3 picks to me are roughly equal. So anything 101, 102, 103, I'm happy with. After that, strategy gets a bit more janky. Ryan, who do you want to target for our first pick here while I try to find Bucky Irving in our consensus stuff?
I mean, so we've done an Amon-Ra team, we've done a Lamar Jackson team, we did an AJ Brown team. So yeah, I mean, between all of those, I probably like Brown the most.
Especially as a one-off. I think he's really, really strong. I don't love the pairing with Hurts as much, although our projections do. But yeah, I think AJ Brown is a one-off. I mean, against a team that runs a ton of man, a ton of single high. We've seen this before. You know, he gets one-on-one on the outside. You just chuck it up to him, and it's almost like a Madden glitch, right? Like it's a 70-yard touchdown like half the time. It's crazy. All right, I was
actually who's the sixth overall by ADP? We've sorted by our rankings. I'm realizing this. We have Brown a lot higher than his ADP because we could just like in a spot like this. I might say, oh, okay, whatever. I'll get my Jahmyr Gibbs or my Bijan Robinson exposure.
Yeah, especially if we do want to go with a Justin Fields team, maybe we should just take the top plays by ADP. We have Bijan slightly ahead of Jahmyr. Where do you fall on Bijan? I think everything lines up for him. The usage hasn't been great, but the matchup is obviously incredible. Do you prefer him over Gibbs, or are you at all worried about the hammy?
I do. I guess slightly prefer him over Gibbs in a vacuum. I'm just this game just gives kind of rough vibes to me. I don't know if either team is gonna like the Falcons' pass rate over expectation has been very high, but I don't know that like the Panthers can stick in it or stay with them. So I don't know if they get up 21-3 or whatever, and then it should be okay. It's Bijan. But yeah, we're not really pushing the pace of the game at that point. But yeah, I like him fine. Schematically, the matchup is great. The Panthers have been very vulnerable to outside zone, especially, which is like 80% of what Bijan gets. This would definitely be the week, or definitely be the spot for it for Bijan.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I know Hilo noted that these cover 3 teams are generally stronger against outside zone. I mean, Carolina, despite running a ton of cover 3, still sucks against outside zone. And just zone concepts in general. I believe they're bottom 5 in success rate, bottom 5 in yards per carry allowed against zone run concepts. Those constitute 82% of Bijan Robinson's carries. I mean, they really don't run much man gap type stuff in Atlanta. Coming back to the consensus projections on Bucky Irving and Rico Dowdle, just looking at DraftKings scoring, which obviously isn't quite as applicable for Battle Royale, but it's just what I have on my screen right now. It looks like Bucky Irving is the RB10 by consensus projection. Rico Dowdle is the RB17, about a 3-point gap between the two. So, still, I think pretty clear that Bucky Irving is the better play. But again, I mean, you can draft Rico Dowdle in these large tournaments. I do think it's okay, especially in this game environment where Zeke is total dust. The coach speak on Dowdle is good. It's not a pick that I'm super super thrilled with overall. We're coming up on our next pick here, Ryan. If we do want to go Justin Fields, George Pickens, which is kind of what I'm tempted by, I just think that's a hilarious way to end the stream.
Yeah.
How should we projection max looking at our rankings? Probably going tight end here.
Yeah, I think Ferguson is kind of the clear way we go here. Yeah, I don't feel any particular way about the running backs at this point. We got to save a slot for Pickens at wide receiver. So, yeah, I think pretty clearly Ferguson.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. We could grab either like Chuba, Jacobs, Bucky with our final pick. I kind of like the idea of grabbing some Josh Jacobs exposure here. Haven't gotten much of him, and I think he could soak up a lot of the touchdown equity in Green Bay. He's kind of stuck in like a 65-35 split with Emmanuel Wilson, but his snap share does jump pretty significantly inside the 10 to about 80-85%. So the role for Josh Jacobs is pretty solid, and he's not a guy that I've been getting a ton of because we are a bit lower on him than ADP. So unless you have any objections, I think I'll go Jacobs here because we're going to be very unique, right, with Fields and Pickens. So I really don't mind just grabbing the top player by ADP.
Yep. Yeah, no, this is the type of team to get your exposures to those types of players where, we know we're doing something weird at the end of the draft. So, yeah, may as well draft the guys that you either don't normally or that, if you run into like a really amazing ADP value or something, then great. But, yeah, it's fine with me going Jacobs.
Yeah. Feel pretty good about it. Man, George Pickens for tournaments, I think is pretty interesting. Not a guy I'm going to get too much in like DFS type stuff, but obviously he has the talent. The blow up game is possible. Ryan, I think you were the one who noted that, Las Vegas is a bit of a slot funnel. He's playing a little bit more in the slot, but then of course, there's the risk that he actually runs 8 routes and that he's just full blown bench because of character concerns, locker room stuff. I mean, God only knows what happened in practice this week. Bing King asked, let's make our Fields pick here, but he asked about Devonta Smith at 7,300 on FanDuel. I haven't looked at a ton of FanDuel stuff, so let me just pull that up real quick. But I do know that FanDuel has one of the single best tournaments in the industry. It's a $3 150 max with a 750K prize pool, but they only take in like 680K of entries. It pays the top 50% and they offer 75K in overlay. So that's a tournament I don't think I'm going to max, but I'll probably fire like 100 entries in this week. So if you have any interest in FanDuel, I know the site sucks and they lock you out constantly. If you can log into your FanDuel account, I think that's definitely worth playing. But here, I'll draft Pickens, and then we can get to Devonta Smith. Do you have any takes on Devonta Smith before I pull up the industry projections?
I mean, not really. He just is significantly hurt by single high. Obviously, the schematic matchup, is not great. It really favors AJ Brown. Just kind of the on paper matchup is kind of against the Eagles with all the pressure related stuff that I talked about earlier. So yeah, Smith's probably not a guy I'm getting to. I have no idea about FanDuel though. So I have looked at FanDuel for 0 minutes this week. That has not kind of taken up any time or any brain space for me. So maybe he's an awesome value on FanDuel. I have no clue.
FanDuel is really interesting because people hate FanDuel. You can't download CSVs, so it's really hard to do FanDuel research overall. Most good players just focus all of their attention on DraftKings, which I think is very, very justifiable. And I mean, DraftKings is just like a better company. Oh, and I pulled up the wrong site. But Ryan, while I struggle to answer this Devonta Smith question, why don't you tell the people what kind of content they can look forward from you on a weekly basis?
Yeah. So first, probably the biggest thing, advanced matchups for this week came out earlier today. It is free to read this week only, no paywall. All you have to do is click on the article and you can read my entire schematic breakdown of the slate. Lots of good prop bets in there as well, if that's more your thing, if you're not a huge DFS or Battle Royale player. Highly recommend going and checking that out. Advanced matchups week 6 on Fantasy Points. Aside from that, Tuesday nights, I'm right here on Dynasty Points. If you are a Dynasty head, absolutely love doing that show. We have a lot of fun. Just go. We did our wide receiver tiers. We did a tier list. We became tier list YouTubers this week. Tiered our Dynasty wide receivers. Other than that, I'm just constantly on shows, constantly putting out articles. At the Everything Report, 5 stats to know Monday mornings, right off the rip, to give you kind of an overview of what I thought was most important from the weekend. So you can always find my content on Fantasy Points.
Ryan's stuff is absolutely fantastic. Would certainly check that out. And again, if you have any Battle Royale specific questions, you can always hit them up in the Fantasy Points Discord. The Underdog Battle Royale channel is free. I'll be dropping our rankings in there for free tomorrow, probably around noon. So definitely give that a look. To wrap up here with some of these final questions, Bink King, it looks like Devonta Smith is a pretty solid value. We have him the wide receiver 13 in our FanDuel projections by projected value. So I think 7,300 is a fine salary. Again, we don't really have any like super favorable schematic or matchup notes there. But with the Eagles having a massive implied total, he could certainly have a decent game. And then he also asked, how our Burrow doubles did last week. And Ryan, obviously the answer was very, very well. Our controversial Battle Royale team, as I said earlier in the show, where we reached significantly, we started with Henry Chase, very rare combo. Then we reached multiple rounds to grab T. Higgins and Joe Burrow. That team had a top 0.003% finish. I believe it finished right around 150th place. Had Derrick Henry scored on that final 51-yard run, it would have finished around 40th for I think $500 on a $5 entry. So that ended up going really, really well. And again, I think it proves the point that you can reach in these drafts if you assume ADP is inefficient, which we do, and if you trust your own projections, your own player takes. I certainly think that is a good note. Got another compliment on Ryan's article. Ryan's article is so damn good. I'm an award-winning fantasy writer, and I could never produce anything remotely as good as Advanced Matchups. It is a really kick-ass piece. Really glad to have Ryan on the team, but that'll do it, guys, for the Week 6 edition of the Underdog Drafter Party. Really appreciate all the comments, all the questions. Always love answering the questions and engaging with you guys. This is the most fun show that I do all week. I always really appreciate all the viewership that we get. We will see you guys next week, and I hope to see everyone at the top of the leaderboards.
What? Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.